We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast. And today's the day, man. Today is the day that the NCAA's spring college football transfer portal window officially opens. It'll be open from today through the next couple of weeks. And there's already some movement on the transfer portal front in the world of Georgia athletics. So we'll dive into that. We'll also spend a good chunk of time looking at Georgia football's biggest needs in this spring transfer portal window. So we'll have a lot of fun with that. But before we get there, guys, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to this channel right now for a lot more content designed for all you diehard Georgia fans out there. I know you're out there. This channel is for you, and you don't want to miss any of our content. So subscribe, like, comment, all that's a huge help, guys. I greatly appreciate you. First off, just for being here, so thank you for that. But any help you can offer is certainly greatly appreciated. And while you're at it, check out full episodes of our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever. Going to have you guys cover with a ton of great Georgia football, Georgia baseball, Georgia basketball, a ton of Georgia sports content in general, but certainly we go heavy on the Georgia football. But all right, transfer portal. Let's talk, guys. It's officially open, and we already had some movement early today. Branson Robinson, at this point, a longtime Georgia running back who hasn't actually played a lot for Georgia. He has officially entered his name in the transfer portal. And that's honestly, when I saw it, I wasn't expecting that today. But when you see it, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I get it. That makes sense. And you hate it for the kids. There's a guy coming out of Mississippi, the 2022 class? Yeah, he was a freshman in 2022 when we won the national title. This guy was a big-time get for Georgia coming out of high school. I mean, he looks the part physically. Low center of gravity, good speed, power, all that. The combination, man. Like, he looked like he was going to be one of the next great Georgia running backs. But unfortunately, injuries kind of derailed his Georgia career. And I hate it for him because by all accounts, everything I've ever heard about Branson is he's just one of the good guys, man. One of the good kids out there. And you want good things to happen for guys like that. Like I always say, I want good things to happen for Gunnar Stockton. He's a good dude. Ultimately, I want what's best for Georgia, but you also want to see good things happen to good guys. So I hate that it kind of ended this way for Branson at Georgia. Just a rash of injuries, man. Really unfortunate stuff, but I hope he goes off and has a ton of success wherever he ends up. I hope he finds a really good situation for himself and just has a ton of success. I think that the DGD moniker sometimes gets overused. We apply that to a lot of guys who maybe it shouldn't always apply to. I don't exactly know what the criteria is. Is there a set criteria? No. But you know what? I might throw that on Branson because this is a guy that, he could have transferred a couple different times, but didn't. Try to stick it out. But the injuries, man, they just derailed him, and we keep adding stud after stud at the running back position. Guys like Nate Frazier, guys like Bo Walker in this class. Chauncey Bowens look good at G-Day. So I get it with Branson. I don't know where he'll end up. I imagine he'll be at a Power 4 school somewhere. I think I saw North Carolina as an option for him. So there's some schools out there. It won't be in the SEC because if it's the spring transfer portal window, if you enter in this spring window, you cannot transfer within the SEC. That's an SEC rule. Now, if he had entered the portal back in the winter, in December, yes, he could go to an SEC school, but that's not the situation here. So it won't be somewhere in the SEC, but I imagine he'll find a really nice landing spot. And again, I hope he has a great end of his career because that guy certainly deserves that. That's it for now. There will probably be some more movement. You tend to see this after the spring, guys. They'll stick around through the winter and just go through spring practice, see what happens, see where I'm at the depth chart when we get to the end of spring post G-Day. But now the guys have a better feel for where they are. You might see some names enter the portal. And that kind of makes sense with Branson, right? You see a guy like Bo Walker as a true freshman really emerge, Obviously, Nate Frazier kind of established himself as the number one guy. Chauncey Bowens did some good things. Dwight Phillips had a good spring as well. So it kind of makes sense for Branson, kind of seeing how things shaped up at running back coming out of the spring. Yeah, it might be time for him to enter the portal there. But there'll probably be some more names. It's just what we've got on this first day. I do want to throw this out there real quick. So I have pre-recorded. I actually recorded this yesterday. I was going to post it today, but I decided to push it back to the end of this week. I've recorded, I haven't put it out yet, a post-spring practice offensive depth chart episode for you guys. That's coming your way, but it's not out yet. Now, since I recorded that prior to knowing Branson Robinson was going to transfer, I mentioned him. I didn't have him in the 2D because his injury situation is kind of an unknown, but I didn't mention him there. So when you get to that episode, just understand I recorded that prior to this news, just putting that out there. But yeah, Branson's in the portal. We'll see what else happens, what other names hit. But what I want to spend the rest of today talking about is what are Georgia's biggest needs in the transfer portal. Now, fortunately, we are in a good position. Kirby Smart does as good of a job as anyone out there in terms of roster management and keeping guys and retaining guys on a roster that we think can help us win football games. You can't retain all of them. It's just the nature of the beast these days, but he does a really good job, all considering, relative to the rest of the country, in keeping these guys on our roster. So we are fortunate to not really be in a position where we have a spot on the team where we just have no talent. That's not the case. But there are some spots on the team, some positions where we don't have enough depth to make you feel comfortable going into a college football season, especially when you consider the last 2 seasons and how we have been decimated with injuries 2 years in a row. It just killed us. So when you go into the 2025 season, you would like to be as deep as you can be, really all over the place, but certainly at some key positions. So I do think that there are some positions that Georgia needs to explore the transfer portal in a big way. I've mentioned these before, but I want to go a little bit more in depth with them here today. I got to start with the jack linebacker position, the edge position. This is kind of case in point. I don't think we lack for talent there. The bodies that we have, the players that we have at the jack linebacker position are really talented players. Guys, I feel really good about. I feel great about Gabe Harris when he comes back from injury. I've been high on him since he came out of high school. I liked him more than Samuel Mpimba. Honestly, I liked him more than Damon Wilson Jr. coming out of high school. We'll see how things work with Damon Wilson Jr. now that he's transferred out of Georgia, but I really liked Gabe Harris. We used him more as a 5-tech his first couple years here at Georgia, which I think had him playing out of position. We kind of used him in their situation. I never thought he was quite big enough to really hold up against the run at the 5-tech. I think he's a much better fit at jack linebacker, and now we have a need there. So he's probably, in my opinion, going to be that guy. And then you have a really talented rising redshirt freshman in Quintavious Johnson, who started to do some really good things, started to hear more buzz about him fall camp last year. But he has essentially zero experience to speak of, like any kind of meaningful experience. Gabe has some experience at the 5-tech, but very little experience at the jack linebacker position. Then you land a guy like Isaiah Gibson, a top 10 national recruit, a 5-star guy. Think the world of him. We've got some talented guys there. Kennegbach, I like him as well. That guy's a talented football player and was really starting to come on as the spring progressed. But again, we're talking about a ton of inexperience at a really important position, especially when you're trying to replace the quantity of pass rushers that we were having to replace. The production we got from that position in terms of guys like Chaz Chambers with 6.5 sacks in his senior year. You got Jalen Walker, Bucks Award winner, 6.5 sacks, tied for the team lead with Chaz Chambers. You got Damon Wilson Jr. All 3 of those guys gone out of the picture, and they all at various times in various situations played that jack linebacker position, as did Mykel Williams situationally at times. So all 4 of those guys are out the window. We have some talented players, but we have very little experience at that position, and I would also just like more bodies there. Let's be real. I would like more bodies, and I like Gabe Harris. I still have some questions against the run. I need to see him do it against the run there at that position. I really like Quintavious Johnson, but again, being able to set the edge effectively, we need to see more of that. So I would like to go find a guy let's find an impact player. First off, we can find a guy that's a total package. Yeah, let's get that guy. But I do think we need to find a guy that's maybe a little bit bigger at that position that can help us defend against the run, set the edge on standard downs. Guys like Mykel Williams did for us at times last year, like Chaz Chambers was awesome at last year. Chaz always did a really good job of that, at least playing physically at that position. So I like the guys we have, but I would love to add someone in there that can certainly help us in that regard. And if you can find an elite big-time pass rusher that can disrupt the opposing offense in that type of way, yes, go after a guy like that. So I do think that's a position that we need to take a long, hard look at in the portal. And there seems to be already a number of names that have entered the portal. I'm not going to throw those names out there right now because honestly, I don't know at this early stage in this window, like day one, who is Georgia actually contacting? Who are we actively recruiting? When I get some more information on that, then we'll talk real names. There's some guys. There's a guy from North Carolina. There's a couple. I think there was a guy from Georgia State that entered the portal. So there are some names out there, but I'm going to refrain from diving into all those guys until we have more hard evidence that Georgia's actually recruiting these guys. I don't want to waste your time on a dude that we're not actually recruiting. So as we get a little bit further into this portal window and some of these names start to emerge that Georgia's actually actively involved with, then we'll talk about those guys. But I do think that's a position that we need to certainly take a long, hard look at in the portal. The 5 tech, I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think that's also a position that we need to find some help. I just like with Jack linebacker, I like the talent we have there. I love Joseph Jonah-Ajanye. Long term, I think his ceiling is off the freaking charts. This guy has everything you would want in a 5 tech. He's got the size, the power, the length, the athleticism. I think he can give us more pass rush in that position than almost anybody we've had there, sans maybe Michael Williams. When he gets to that, like when he gets to that developmental point, when he gets to that point in his development, he's still young. He missed a little bit more than half last year, coming off a foot injury, missed most of the spring, played at G-Day, but didn't do a ton most of the spring, so he's missed some developmental reps there, but he was a guy, as an early enrollee true freshman back last spring and last fall, we had some injuries in that position. Guys like TID and Michael, those guys were injured. So he did get more reps there, so that kind of accelerated his growth early in his career. But I just need to see him do it on a consistent basis. I believe in the talent long term, but is he ready to be that guy in year 2? Fingers crossed, baby. I hope so, but I can't tell you that with a high degree of confidence because he just didn't do that much this spring. I don't know. Hopefully, but we'll see there. Justin Green's a guy that came on really strong this spring, certainly with JJA not able to do as much this spring. So Justin Green, another guy in the 2024 class, not as highly recruited, but a guy's just a really solid football player coming out of Mountain View High School in Gwinnett County. And I grew up in Gwinnett County, guys, so I have some context still around there. This guy, I was watching him coming out of high school. I liked him coming out of high school. I wasn't like over the moon about him the way I was maybe with JJA, but I like his talent. He's a guy that took a really nice step forward this spring. He's going to play a lot for us there, but just like with Jack, if those are our top 2 guys at the 5 tech position, which right now they kind of are. We're talking about almost no experience. Joseph Jonah-Ajanye has some, like the first couple of games last year before he suffered that season-ending foot injury, but very little to speak of. And then you're looking at a guy like Justin Green's got none, like nada, zero, zilch, in terms of like meaningful experience on the field. And we're going to Tennessee week 3. We need some experience. We need more talent in that room. We just need more bodies. You need more depth. Again, certainly considering the injuries that we've dealt with all over the place. Certainly on the defensive line, a big way last year. We dealt with a lot of injuries there with Jordan Hall missing basically the entire year. You had Warren Brinson miss half the year. Christian Miller missed some time at the end of the year. We were just decimated. Michael Williams missed time. Was never really fully healthy last year if you hear him talk about it. So you're going to have injuries there. You need not just bodies. Like we have bodies. We need guys that can be impact players for Georgia. Like this is a program. Every year we go into the season thinking national title. That's a realistic goal for us. But for us to actually do that, you need to find guys that can be impact players for us and give you the kind of depth. That's always been one of the things that Georgia's had. Like when we won those back-to-back national titles, yes, we had top-of-the-line talent. Of course, you have guys like Brock Bowers and Jalen Carter, and Jordan Davis and N'Kobe Dean, Kamari Lassiter, all those guys. You have top-line talent, yes. But we also had ridiculous depth because we stacked recruiting class on top of recruiting class on top of recruiting class the way that Kirby Smart does. But now with NIL and the injury situation, that depth has been challenged in a way that it wasn't in 21 and 22. So if you want to get back to winning national titles, you need to find as much depth as you can and impact type depth at positions like that. So yeah, I think we need to certainly take a long, hard look at the 5 tech position defensively. Offensively, now that Branson Robinson has officially entered the transfer portal, I do think running back is a position that I would like us to try to find somebody that we can bring in here. I do think that's going to be a hard sell. We got a guy like Nate Frazier, who's the clear number 1 running back on this team right now. I think he's going to be a stud, highly recruited guy, fringe 5-star guy coming out of high school, Mater Dei High School last year. That's going to be a hard sell because whoever you try to bring in, you can't tell them, hey, man, like, we got nobody. Like, you're going to be the dude. That's a tough sell. Like with Trevor Etienne coming into last year, he didn't know Nate Frazier was going to be what Nate Frazier was going to be. Branson Robinson was coming off an injury. Roger Robinson hadn't really done all that much, also coming off an injury at the end of the back half of 2023. So it seemed like a clear path to playing time. Like he'd be the number 1 guy at Georgia in a way that he wasn't. He was splitting time at Florida. I don't think we don't have that. I don't think. It's not a matter of thinking. We don't have that to sell because people know who Nate Frazier is, right? And there's a lot of buzz about Bo Walker as a true freshman. Chauncey Bowens did some good things this spring. So we have some high-profile names there. The issue is we just don't have a ton of depth. So I don't think that we're going to go out and get a top-of-the-line dude out of the portal. I know I saw some Georgia fans on social media, like when Jaden Ott from Cal hit the portal, people were like, oh my God, go get him. It's like, well, yeah, of course. Ott's incredible. He's like the leading rusher in the Pac-12 a couple years ago. But we're not going to get that guy because we've got Nate Frazier. Wherever he's going to be the number one guy. Like, yeah, he wants to get paid, but he also wants to play. Like, he wants to show off for the NFL. And he would play at Georgia. He's a really good running back, but he's not going to be the number one guy. At best, he'd be like a 1A, 1B situation where he's splitting snaps. So I don't think we're going to be able to find a guy like that, but it doesn't mean we can't find a guy that can help us in the portal. And me saying that I think that we need to go look for somebody at running back in the portal, that's not a reflection of how I feel about the running backs that we do have. I love Nate Frazier. I've been waxing poetic about Nate Frazier since I saw him for the first time in a Georgia uniform, not in the Clemson game, back in fall camp last year when I was able to take him to practice and I saw that guy. I sat here in this very spot and did a recap of that practice and told you guys the one guy above all else, above everyone else, who stood out to me the most at that practice last fall was Nate Frazier. I walked away from that scrimmage saying, oh my God, this guy is going to be the next great Georgia running back. And I still kind of believe that. I know, last year, he obviously bust on the scene week one. Everybody kind of saw what I was talking about. And then he dealt with some injuries as the season progressed. Didn't get as many carries, got in and out of the lineup, fumble issues, if you want to call them that, whatever. But the guy's a stud, right? So I love Nate Frazier. You know how I feel about Bo Walker. I did an episode a couple weeks ago talking about how awesome this guy is and how many heads he's turning this spring, the eyes that he's opening this spring as a true freshman, early enrollee. I told you guys earlier this week in my G-Day recap, if you haven't checked that out, make sure to check that out for the most in-depth, comprehensive deep dive of G-Day that you're going to find anywhere. But I told you guys I thought Chauncey Bowens was one of the standouts at G-Day. I thought he looked really, really good. I didn't hear his name as much throughout the spring from people that I trust and people that I talk to. But when I saw my own two eyes at G-Day, it was like, yep, that guy looks a lot better this year. So I think we have a really nice three-headed monster there. But again, injuries have hurt us all over the place, but at running back as well. Remember at the beginning of 2023, we were a mash unit at running back. I mean, you had Kendall Milton, who was maybe like 60%, and that dude gutted it out for us and started game one, but Dejan Edwards wasn't ready to play. Roger Robinson was playing a little bit, but then he got banged up. So we had very few running backs to work with back at the beginning of 2023. That's a very physical position to play in any league, but certainly the SEC. So history tells us we need bodies there. And again, Georgia doesn't just take bodies. Georgia is a team that can contend for a national title. So go find guys that can help you win a national title. I don't know if a guy's out there. I mean, you can only get who enters the portal. I don't know what other running backs will enter the portal, but if somebody that can help us enters the portal, I think it would behoove us to take a nice, long, hard look at a running back to bring in to kind of supplement the guys that we already had that I do think very highly of, but I want more. We need depth at that position, no doubt about it. And then finally, we'll stick with the offense here, one more position. I think this is the least pressing need in terms of the positions I'm going to mention here today on this show. But if the right guy shows up in the transfer portal, I don't think it would be the worst idea for Georgia to explore bringing in another quarterback. Now, hear me out on this. This is not me saying, oh my God, guys, it's time to panic. Gunnar Stockton can't do the job. If you listen to the episode earlier this week where I talked about how great I thought Gunnar Stockton looked and how much more I believe in him now, every time I see the guy, I think he continues to improve. Not perfect, but continues to improve. And now I am a believer in Gunnar Stockton in the way that I wasn't always. I had been a skeptic of his at times. So it's not a reflection on how I feel about Gunnar. I think Gunnar is going to be more than fine for Georgia this year. I'm really high on Ryan Puglisi. I think that guy has a really bright future at the college level, hopefully with Georgia at some point. But that's it, guys. That's all we have right now that you would feel remotely comfortable taking a snap for Georgia. And even Puglisi, as talented as he is, I mean, guys, he's still very early in his development. Very, very early in his development. He missed all of last spring, most of fall camp last year with injury. He's basically, I know he's been in our system for a year, but in terms of like getting real reps that aren't like scout team reps, he's basically a glorified freshman, okay? So God forbid something happens to Gunnar Stockton. We saw it happen to our starting quarterback right before the half of the SEC freaking championship game last year, guys. I like Puglisi. I think he's talented, but him going out there let's say if, knock on wood, God forbid, something happens to Gunnar in the middle of the Alabama game, and you put Puglisi in there in that situation, I don't know how he's going to respond. I have no idea. No one does. I think he's a talented kid. I don't know where he is right now, man. Like, I think he's doing some good things. It looks like he's learning the system. He's feeling more comfortable. He's not fully there yet, man. So if there's a veteran quarterback that we can find that's willing to come into our situation knowing that he is probably not, almost certainly not going to be QB1 for Georgia this year, but is willing to come in and maybe wait his turn to fight it out in the future, or maybe just, hey, you know what? I want to play for a winning program. I don't know who you find that fits that criteria, because most of these guys in the transfer portal at the quarterback position especially, they want to get paid, but they want to go somewhere where they're going to play. Most schools, only one quarterback plays. So if you have a guy that's pretty much established as a starter, like I think Gunnar Stockton is, you have a talented young guy behind him, and you're going to walk into that, you're not going to go find a guy like Jackson Arnold. That was a guy that when he entered the portal back in the winter, I was like, hey man, I would love to go get Jackson Arnold. I would love that. But then of course, Gunnar starts the Sugar Bowl, and like we were never going to get a guy like that. I wanted John Mateer, because I knew John Mateer was going to transfer from Washington State before he actually entered the portal. Like it was kind of like an open secret that was going to happen. And so I was like, before the injury happened to Carson, before Gunnar took over late in the season, I'm like, yes, please, God, go get that guy. That guy's a freaking stud. Like, he could change the game for Georgia. I want a true dual threat quarterback, and that is John Mateer. He can run, he can throw, talented guy, physical specimen, all that stuff, right? But when Carson goes down and Gunnar is now like the guy that's going to win you the SEC championship game, then start the Sugar Bowl and look pretty good in the Sugar Bowl, all things considered, we were never going to get a guy like that. Like it was too much of a risk for them to come to Georgia. So it still represents a huge risk for any quarterback that has any other options than Georgia to come to Georgia. But hey, if you can find the right guy, it's going to be a hard sell. I fully recognize that. But right now we have two guys in the quarterback position that you feel like remotely comfortable taking a snap for Georgia. Like I like Hezekiah Millender from here in Athens, just down the road from me at Clark Central High School. The guy is not ready to play football for Georgia right now. He could be in a couple of years, like the talent, like the skill set. He's just not there. He's just not there. Okay, I watched a guy play a lot in high school. Really physically talented kid. Trust me, as a passer, guy's not there. Okay, he can get there. He's just not there right now. So you go into a season with two guys that you have any kind of comfort level playing for you at the most important position on the field, and maybe even one guy. Because, I mean, Puglisi, talented, again, where are you in your development? So you might have one guy you feel comfortable with. That's a tough spot to be in. That's a really tough spot to be in. There's a reason why it was Gunnar and Puglisi taking basically all the snaps for 2 series at G-Day, because we know that's all we kind of remotely feel comfortable with. We're trying to get Puglisi up to speed, so if God forbid he has to play, he can come in and function effectively for us. So I know, hard sell, but if we can find somebody that's willing to come in, that's a veteran, played college football, been around for a while, can maybe win us a game if we need him to win us a game, find a guy and take him if you can find him. Tough, easier said than done, but I do think it would certainly be in our best interest to at least explore the options there and see what we can find. But there you go, guys. I think those are 4 positions that Georgia needs to be looking hard at during this spring transfer portal window. And hey, you know what? If there just happens to be a stud out there at whatever position that's just a rock star and he wants to come to Georgia, it might be hard to tell those guys no. I know you got scholarship numbers, you only have so much NIL money, right? But I do think there are a number of positions that we should certainly take a long, hard look at the portal and see if we can find guys that can help us win this season. Not so much trying to fill a talent gap, but just filling a depth gap at certain positions on this Georgia football team. But all right, guys, there you go. Those are my thoughts on the early part of this spring transfer portal window. And certainly as there are more developments, as more of our guys potentially enter the portal, as we start to hear some more names, as we potentially land some guys on the portal, we're going to have you 100% covered here on the Glory UJ podcast. So again, you don't want to miss any of that content. All this stuff is designed for all you diehard Georgia fans out there. So make sure to subscribe right now if you haven't already. Subscribe, like, comment, greatly appreciate you. And of course, check out the Glory UJ podcast, wherever you get your pods, for full episodes of our show. So thank you for being here, guys. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs!
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.